Hello everyone, Salam, Namaste, Adab, and welcome to today's event. Today we are going to have a enlightening narration on Quran, the Quran and modernity. Ishrat Aziz, Ambassador Ishrat Aziz has written this book. He is going to talk on that in detail, and he will be formally introduced, or the theme itself, by Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad. Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad was ambassador to Saudi Arabia twice and to Oman and UAE. Recently he talked on this forum also, I think twice. And Ambassador Ishrat Aziz, as you know, ambassador to UAE, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, and Tunisia. Both are senior diplomats, but both are very interested in Muslim heritage, Islamic heritage, and they talk a lot on this. They have written books on this, especially Ambassador Talmiz has written 4 books, not on Quran, but on Muslim-related issues, Arab-related issues, a reform in the Arab world. Second is Children of Abraham at War, the clash of militarism, the Islamic challenges in West Asia, and his latest is West Asia at War. And Ambassador Ishrat Aziz has written this book, The Quran and Modernity. This book is not more dealing as in the theology domain, rather in the worldly domain, how to deal. Quran tells how to deal with the Muslims and non-Muslims on the worldly affairs and what Quran says. So stay tuned, and now I invite Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad for the formal introductory remarks.
Thank you very much. It is a matter of great honor for me to introduce my senior colleague, Ambassador Ishrat Aziz. In my professional career as an Indian diplomat, he was my mentor and guide. I served under him for 4 years when I was Consul General in Jeddah, and he was the ambassador in Riyadh. I learned from him both directly in terms of instruction and indirectly as a role model, many aspects which I have attempted to imbibe in my own professional life. The most important aspect about Mr. Ishrat Aziz's approach to issues, personal, professional, diplomatic, political, was to bring to bear a very clear and logical approach. Not to shoot off opinions unless you have collected on the facts, understood what they mean, and then discuss the implications of these facts in a very clear and logical manner. This is something, it was a very important aspect of my own growing up. And I have attempted from then till now to follow this. He very often told me that, look, there are facts and there are opinions. Facts are sacred. You must collect facts first. If I ask you something, is this happening or that happening? You should not begin your sentence with I think. You must give me the fact. Or you can say I don't know and I will collect it. And fact should not be confused with opinion. Opinion follows from fact. And this is his approach. He is very well known in our service for the clarity of his dispatches. He would collect all the facts pertaining to complex issues when he was ambassador in Riyadh. It was a very turbulent period in the 80s and 90s, all across West Asia. We had the global jihad in Afghanistan. We had the Iran-Iraq war ongoing. And then we had the occupation of Kuwait. This was a difficult period. And it needed someone with great clarity of approach to be able to sift through what was being said. Huge quantity of material being showered upon us by dubious sources. To be able to sift all these matters and then give a clear opinion to the government about what has happened, why it has happened, what is the likely outcome. Very clearly. And this is something that comes out also in the book. This is an interesting book for a retired diplomat. Most of us write on regional or global politics, sometimes on economics. And here is Ambassador Ishrat Aziz reflecting on the, the sacred book of Islam. He wants to bring the same qualities of, of clarity of approach, understanding, sifting huge quantity of material, and then presenting it in a clear and lucid manner so that the average reader is convinced by what he has to say. If you go through the book, you will feel the same joy. I mean, you can just sit back and you can read the book and you will find you are constantly learning something. He had a very basic approach that there is a Quran Sharif. It is a sacred text. It is the same text all across the world, so that every Muslim anywhere has the same text in front of him. The text is in classical Arabic, but it has been translated into numerous languages. But the core message that comes out from him is that Islam, the faith, has survived for so many millennia, for so many centuries, is because it has been constantly refreshed and revived. Much of this new vigor comes into the faith when the faith is in the ascendancy, when its leaders and its followers have confidence in themselves, where they believe they have grasped the world affairs politically and economically, and then their culture flourishes. Scientific discovery, exploration, commentary, ability to engage with diverse people on a position of equality. The role of Islam on as the acquirer of knowledge and a sharer of knowledge is crucial to world civilization. If today we have concerns about the state of the faith and its people, its adherents, it's a legitimate concern. And it is very obvious that the kind of vigor and enlightenment that we used to have from our leaders and mentors in earlier periods is possibly lacking. The communities are very badly divided. They have huge internecine conflicts. The sense of vigor and direction appears to be missing. In this scenario, you have a lot of obscurantists, people who come to you and seek to rule your conduct, rule your behavior, rule your thinking, rule your approach to world affairs, and yourself and your faith in the name of Islam. I have heard many times in different sessions, Sharia to ye kehta hai. What is this nonsense? Is there a book called Sharia? Is there something that you have read? Something that you have understood? The core message that comes out in the book that Ambassador Ishrat Aziz has written is that, that Islam is a dynamic faith. Inherent in the message of Islam is the use of reason, rationality, openness, and constantly thinking through ways in which the faith can be refreshed and made relevant to contemporary times. This is the message that comes out. It is a very urgent message because as the Muslim communities are now divided, many of them, they live in Muslim countries, but you would find it very difficult to see many of them are authoritarian regimes. You also have large numbers of Muslims who live as minorities in non-Muslim countries. Over the last few decades, you find an active hostility to the faith and its adherents, particularly in Western countries. Entire political careers are being built on the basis of Islamophobia. there is also a sense that the effective response to these challenges is not emerging from the people. The people are subdued. They're as if they are cowed down, as if there is a certain sense of embarrassment about their identity. This has been challenged again by Ambassador Ishrat Aziz. He will have none of this. This is a dynamic faith. It is a message from Allah. It is a message that has been with us for 1400 and odd years. It has taken Islam to great glory. And if there is a certain period experienced today, that is a sense of loss, a sense of defeat, a sense of low morale, it also calls for introspection and a fresh understanding of who we are, where we have come from, and where we should be going. As I speak to you, we have the carnage of Gaza. It is possibly one of the lowest periods in recent Islamic history. This is something, there is no response. Have you noticed? All these millions and Muslims, so many states, 40, 50 states, so many potentates, so many powerful rulers, some of them extraordinarily affluent, not one of them has had the courage or the capacity to speak up on behalf of this beleaguered community. Is it therefore shocking that there is a gross mistreatment of this community in different parts of the world, and people get away with it because there is no response? Let me pause here. Let us listen to Ambassador Ishrat Aziz because of the knowledge, because of the clarity that he brings to his points. He's made a very important intervention, and we will all benefit from this. And possibly, just possibly, we could see a sense that there is an alternative path available to us, which we could examine and possibly pursue. Thank you. Thank you, sir, for being with us, for giving me the opportunity to speak about you. If the tribute that I have paid you is extremely modest and very limited and has not done justice to the great value that you have personally brought into my own professional and personal life. And it is a joy for me that we are sitting together at the same platform and are able to talk and listen to each other at this occasion, a very important occasion for all of us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. What a generous introduction. Thank you, Talmiz. You have known me intimately, so I value your remarks. As you all know, for a political leader, voter is the king. Similarly, for a speaker, audience is the king. So my greetings to everyone who has joined this Zoom meeting from different continents of this globe. I would also like to express my appreciation to Razi Raziuddin and members of his team for arranging such events every week on a wide range of important subjects, which gives me the opportunity to be with you all today. Now about my book. Now about the basic message of Quran. With verses from the Quran supplemented by the sayings of Prophet Muhammad, the book demonstrates that the concepts of democracy, tolerance, secularism, human rights, equal rights for women, and all citizens, irrespective of race, religion, and color, intellectual freedom and freedom of conscience, modern banking, finance, and interest, essential for industrial economy and prosperity of the people, are fully compatible with the message of Quran. Indeed, they are not only compatible, they are its requirement. On the other hand, violent jihad causing the death of innocent women and children, persecution and killing in the name of heresy, apostasy, and blasphemy, harsh punishments causing bodily mutilation, like amputation of hand, are contrary to the most basic principles and values of the Quran. The book has been written with the purpose of helping in transition of Muslim societies to modernity, to adopt today's tested political and economic models of democracy, industrial economy, rational thinking for all round progress, especially in science and technology, and thus achieve the strength to defend their legitimate rights in today's world. There is no point in begging for rights. Rights are not given, they are taken. A people cannot stand up for their rights and take them without political and economic strength. The book has deliberately been titled The Quran and Modernity and not Islam and Modernity. That is because while there is a unanimously agreed text of the scripture, there is no unanimously agreed textbook of Islam in which all Muslims believe. Without an agreed text, we cannot be on the same page for the purpose of interpretation, analysis, and conclusion. The book distinguishes between devotional religion and behavioral religion. Devotional religion is about man and God relationship and consists of belief in God and the hereafter, prayer 5 times daily, fasting in the month of Ramadan, Hajj once in a lifetime, and charity. Behavioral religion is about man and man relationship and all matters of daily life in this world. The distinction is important for understanding a few things. While man and God relationship is permanent and unchanging, man and man relations change with circumstances. Man and God relationship is a matter of faith, not subject to verification. Belief in heaven and hell is a matter of faith, not subject to proof, demonstration, and results. Results of devotional religion will be known on the day of judgment. Meanwhile, we believe and act on the basis of faith. Behavioral religion, on the other hand, is about man and man relationship and matters of this world. Like actions of behavioral life can be subject to empirical evidence, verification, and demonstration. For example, results of punishment for crimes, good governance, treatment of women and minorities, jihad, etc., are all matters whose validity cannot be a matter of faith, but should be subject to empirical evidence and results. Moreover, the world and circumstances change, and therefore behavioral religion must evolve with change. The book makes distinction between principles and models. Not understanding the difference and constantly keeping it in view creates endless problems and confusions. For example, there is nothing common between the giant Airbus 380, which can fly 8,000 miles non-stop, carrying 650 passengers at a height of 40,000 feet, and the plane of Wright brothers, which could only fly for less than 100 yards, just 50 feet above the ground. But the principle of aerodynamics is the same in both cases. Bernoulli's discovery of the principle of pressure difference above and below the wing. Similarly, there is nothing in common between firework rocket, which rises 100 feet and then falls to the ground, and the giant Saturn rocket weighing 380 tons, which took 3 men to the moon and brought them back alive and safe. But in both cases, the principle is the same. Newton's third law of motion, that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. In human affairs, this distinction between principle and models can be illustrated as follows. Justice in governance is the principle. 1400 years ago, in Medina, it was sought to be achieved by consultative caliphate. Today, it is done through democracy, universal suffrage, and a host of laws and institutions. The principle is the same, namely justice. Only the models have changed. Caliphate was not a principle, but only a model for the implementation of the principle of good governance. Many people oppose change of models because of not understanding the difference between models and principles. They oppose change of models in human affairs because of the mistaken belief that it is change of principle. Change of models with experience is unavoidable for better performance and coping with circumstances. The book emphasizes holistic approach to study and interpretation of Quran. Holistic approach calls for all the principles and guidance of the scripture to be considered and evaluated together. Interpreting verses in isolation can lead to contradictory conclusions. Coherence requires holistic approach in laws and governance. Coherence requires embodying the basic principles in the preamble and articles on individual rights, all other provisions of the Constitution, and all laws must conform to the preamble and articles on human rights. Similarly, basic principles in Quran like justice, equality, human dignity, compassion, charity must constitute the preamble of all laws, must constitute the preamble, and all laws must conform to them. Without such an approach, coherence is not possible. A society's management is impossible without coherence. Chapter 2 of the book deals with the question of interpretation with changing times. It clearly makes the point that there can be no interpretation for all times, places, and circumstances. To do that, one must be all-knowing. That is, he should know everything about every place and every time. There is no such human being, never was, never will be. Only God is all-knowing. So, interpretation of Quran's message is in matters of behavioral religion must evolve with time and change. The book maintains that besides Quran and Sunnah, we must also reflect over the 99 attributes of God to understand and interpret the message of Scripture. This is important because while there are disputes about the authenticity of some ahadith and Sunnah, there is unanimity about the 99 attributes of God. If one reflects carefully, the conclusion is inevitable that God's 99 attributes constitute the quintessence of Quran's message. For understanding and interpreting Quran, the book follows principles laid down in this holy scripture itself. For example, in a number of verses, Quran says clearly that it has been sent as a blessing to mankind. Blessing can only mean welfare. So the interpretation of any verse in the Quran must be based on its compatibility with the goal of people's welfare. The well-known verse, there can be no compulsion in religion, has far-reaching implications. This verse guarantees freedom of thought and conscience. If there is no compulsion in religion, how can there be restrictions on thought and opinion and their expression, since that amounts to compulsion? Equally, this verse nullifies concepts of hypocrisy, of apostasy, heresy, and blasphemy. Concepts of apostasy, heresy, and blasphemy amount to compulsion in faith, which is clearly forbidden by this Quranic verse. Compulsion in religion is slavery in faith. Another verse lays down that some verses are more basic than others. This verse also has vast implications. It means that verses about justice, equality, human dignity, compassion, charity, forgiveness are far more important than verses about hijab, punishments like amputation of hand, and lashing for adultery. The important verses lay down the governing principles to which the less important verses about hijab, lashing, cutting of hand, etc., must conform. They cannot ignore the basic principles, as in that case, they become ultra vires, as they say in constitutional law. The compatibility of democracy and secularism is based on the most fundamental Quranic principle, justice. Justice calls for equality, which requires secularism in governance. There is no justice and equality in a society without secularism. Justice and equality demand secularism. Quran also calls for consultative decision making, which calls for democracy and goes against authoritarianism in any form. Democracy based on universal voting rights is far better model for the Quranic ideal of consultative governance than any other system, including caliphate. Similarly, the case for equality for women in the book has been made on the basis of the first principles of Quran, namely justice, equality, fairness, and human dignity. There can be no justice in a Muslim society without full equality for women. Similar is the justification for equality of non-Muslims in a Muslim society. Without equality for all, there is no justice, which is a fundamental Quranic requirement. On the subject of knowledge, science, and technology, the book makes some very rational points. It categorically states that Quran is not a textbook of knowledge. Physics, chemistry, mathematics, politics, economics, geography, astronomy. But by repeatedly emphasizing observation, thinking, reasoning, and understanding, it gives us the key, the methodology of discovering all knowledge and inventing all technologies. Claiming that all discoveries are foreshadowed in Quran leads to difficult and awkward questions. If all knowledge is in Quran, how to explain that for the last 700 years, Muslims who read Quran every day have hardly made any contribution to knowledge, science, and technology. Instead, this has been achieved by Western thinkers who have not even heard of Quran, let alone study it. Instead of making tall claims about Islamic science, Muslims should follow the Quranic methodology of observation, thinking, reasoning, and understanding to make real contribution to science today. Knowledge is universal, and there is no such thing as Islamic science or Islamic economics for that matter. The book links freedom of thought to knowledge. It shows that freedom of thought is a precondition for discoveries, inventions, and new knowledge. Knowing what is already known, what is already discovered and known, does not require thinking and freedom of thought. But without freedom of thought, the pool of knowledge will become stagnant. The absence of discoveries, inventions, and all progress amongst Muslims during the past 700 years is fundamentally due to the absence of freedom of thought. Absence of freedom of thought and expression is in turn due to absence of democracy, rule of law, and human rights. The book makes the point that harsh punishments like amputation of hand for theft, public lashing for adultery, are not part of the fundamental message of Quran, which consists of justice, equality, compassion, forgiveness, and human dignity. While punishments have been mentioned only once, justice, equality, compassion, and forgiveness have been repeatedly emphasized. Punishments are a necessary evil. They are needed because human nature is imperfect and commits lapses. Punishments have a correctional role, not a promotional role, which requires good deeds. Quran was not revealed to tell Makkans that they were not cutting enough hands for theft, but to remind them that they lacked justice, equality, compassion, and charity. The book makes a few points in favor of making punishments more humane. First of all, Quran made all punishments more humane compared to what prevailed before. From this, it is obvious that the direction Quran showed is more humaneness. If we make punishments more humane, it is moving forward in the direction shown by Quran. Second, the harsher the punishment, the graver the injustice to the person concerned, if it turns out that there was a miscarriage of justice. Always a possibility because evidence can never be absolute. Corporal punishments like lashing for adultery and amputation of hand for theft can be removed from the statute books. They do not constitute the basic message of Quran. They are also fixed and irreversible. Punishments like imprisonment and fines can be increased or moderated according to the circumstances of the case. This is not so with amputation of hand. It is fixed and unchangeable. What if it turns out that the person was innocent? A prisoner can be released from the prison, but the hand once cut cannot be restored. In the matter of punishment, the circumstances of the case must be taken into account to decide the quantum of punishment and its severity. Proportionality in amputation of hand is not possible, while proportionality according to circumstances is fundamental for justice. Death penalty can also be abolished because while capital punishment, once carried out, is absolute and irreversible, the evidence is never absolute. The purpose of punishment is to reduce crime and make the society better. There is no evidence that harsh punishments reduce crime. In fact, they brutalize and harden the criminal. Period. The book makes distinction between jihad as a peaceful struggle and jihad as violent war. It makes the point that jihad as peaceful struggle yields better results than jihad as violent war. The former is a positive and productive activity without death and destruction. The latter results in death of innocent people, euphemistically called collateral damage. Good deeds is the best form of jihad. It can be carried out by anyone, anytime on his own. But jihad as war must be authorized. An individual, a group, or even a country on its own cannot declare it. The reason for this is that religion is the common heritage of the entire Muslim community, not any individual group or country. To start a war in the name of religion must therefore have the consensus of the entire community. Political wars can be fought by individuals and groups, but not religious wars. When a war is fought in the name of religion, the entire community becomes responsible for it and target of retaliation. Someone in Afghanistan carried out a jihad attack, but hundreds of thousands of people in Iraq became victims of retaliation. This is unavoidable in a religious war. For jihad to achieve its goal, it must be peaceful activity, not a violent one. Real jihad should be giving your life time for a cause, not giving life, and certainly not taking life, killing and getting killed. About banking and interest, the book states a few things categorically. An analytical study of Quran will show that it does not forbid 5% interest on investment loans by banks, but exorbitant rate of 50% on distress loans by the professional money lender. The most important verse in Quran on interest says, "Do not live on usury, doubling and redoubling your wealth." Clearly, one can double and redouble wealth only on 50% exorbitant interest rate, not on moderate interest rate of 5%. The modern banking interest rate of 5% is perfectly legitimate, apart from being an unavoidable economic necessity. Also, what is forbidden is making living by money lending to the poor and the helpless in distress. The book shows that the so-called Islamic banking is in no way different from modern banking in practice. Islamic banking changes nomenclature but not the substance. It changes the wrapping, not the content. It has failed to take root and grow. It cannot because of its inherent shortcomings. It charges fixed rates from the borrower and pays fixed rates to the depositor. So how is it different from fixed rate banking interest? If its rate of payment to the depositor is not more than the rate of the banks and the rate of charges from the borrower not less, then how is it different from banking interest? Islamic banking does not bring any value by way of more beneficial rates to the depositor and the borrower. Without difference in rate benefiting the depositor and the borrower, there is no value advantage in Islamic banking. Describing the charges from the borrower as administrative expenses and characterizing payment to the depositor as expected rate of profit changes nothing except the nomenclature. It does not become more beneficial, and only what is more beneficial is moral. The chapter on Prophet Muhammad and modernity makes some important points. First, that Prophet Muhammad would have approved most of what has been achieved by mankind over the last 1,000 years in politics, economics, science, and technology, medicine, care for the weak and the handicapped, He would have approved of democracy, freedom, human rights, and equal rights for women. He was a unique combination of religious prophet and political leader. First, the chapter on Prophet Muhammad and modernity makes some important points. First, that Prophet Muhammad would have approved of most of what has been achieved by mankind over the last 1,000 years in politics, economics, science, and technology, medicine, care for the weak and the handicapped. He would have approved of democracy, freedom, human rights, and equal rights for women. He was a unique combination of religious prophet and political leader of the people. As a prophet, he conveyed God's message to mankind, which in just 80 years had spread from Spain in the west to the confines of China in the east. But as a leader, he set an example of good governance. He was not just a preaching prophet, but also a doer who put principles into practice and achieved results. He was a successful leader and achiever because he was a pragmatist. For him, substance was more important than form, content more important than the wrapping. He was a successful leader because he was a pragmatist, and his responsibilities and experience as a leader strengthened his inherent pragmatism. The Treaty of Hudaybiyah illustrates his pragmatism. The Meccans refused to sign the treaty because it referred to Prophet Muhammad by his title, Messenger of God. The followers of Prophet Muhammad were furious, but the Meccans were adamant. Finally, the matter was referred to Prophet Muhammad, who himself deleted the title Messenger of God, and the treaty was signed. As a far-sighted leader, Prophet Muhammad understood the long-term importance of the treaty. It changed the course of history. Like a great lead and successful leader, he always emphasized substance and not the form. Some specific points before I conclude. Bidat, you have all heard of bidat. Bidat is translated in English as innovation. In Islamic theology, it refers to doing something not sanctioned by Quran and Sunnah, and not practiced by doing something and not practiced by Prophet Muhammad. Any and every reform, minor or major, raises the issue of bidat and hinders the progress of people's welfare. The salient points that the book makes are: there cannot be innovation or reform in devotional religion. That is, man and God relationship, prayer, fasting, belief in the hereafter, heaven and hell, etc. There is no need to. Devotional religion is clear and unchanging. But in matters of behavioral religion, which deals with the issues of this world, change of circumstances is inevitable and therefore necessary. For reform to be justified, it must be for the general good and not group interest. It must be done with the consent of the people through their elected representatives. Ulama can give their opinion, but they cannot legislate. That must be the prerogative of only elected legislators. Areas where reform is permissible are human rights, marriage and divorce, inheritance, waqf, banking, finance and interest, crimes and punishments, medicine and surgery, technology and social diversity management. Ijtihad. One often hears that the doors of ijtihad have been closed after the four great imams, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Malik, and Imam Hanbal. What is ijtihad? Briefly, it is a scholarship and application of mind to issues to find solutions to new problems. Obviously, there is little need for ijtihad in the devotional religion, namely the 5 pillars of Islam. On the other hand, the need for regular ijtihad in behavioral religion is necessary because of constant change of circumstances in human affairs and new discoveries, knowledge, and inventions. Some points may be kept in mind on the issue of ijtihad today. There is nothing in Quran and Sunnah to indicate that after the 4 great Imams, all ijtihad must end. Nor have the Imams themselves claimed any finality and end to further ijtihad. Constant change of circumstances is inevitable, and so is the need for constant ijtihad. No doubt, the 4 great Imams were men of exceptional intellect, integrity, and scholarship. But we have had similarly endowed people in all ages. For example, Imam Ghazali in 13th century, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah in 14th century, Imam Muhammad Abdul Wahab in 18th century, Shah Waliullah, more recently Shah Waliullah, Muhammad Abdu, Jamaluddin Afghani, Rashid Rida. As for scholarship, we have far more knowledge available to us than what was available to the 4 Imams. The knowledge that the mankind has accumulated in the physical sciences, medicine, and technology is obvious and indisputable. But what is even more important is that we have 1400 years of world history, particularly the rise and fall of Muslims, available to us, which was not available to them. History is the nearest thing to a laboratory in social sciences. We can understand so much from the history of Muslims in the past 1400 years for correct perspective about practicing behavioral Islam. It is therefore the right as well as the duty of every generation of Muslims to do ijtihad and find solutions to new problems. Diversity. It should be kept in mind that diversity is not in spite of God, but because of his plan for mankind. Compete with each other in good deeds is the Quranic concept of relations between communities and peoples. As Quran says, people of different faiths, Jews, Sabians, and Christians, will all be judged on the basis of their deeds. The importance of good deeds in Quran cannot be overemphasized. Wherever faith has been mentioned, good deed has also been mentioned. The implications of this approach for relations between nations and communities today, competition in good deeds, globalized and internationally an interdependent world cannot be overemphasized. It is so obvious. Internalization of principles and values, and it should finish in 5 minutes. It is easy to preach, but very difficult to persuade people to practice. For more than 4,000 years, there have been prophets, preachers, saints, and moralists exhorting people to live according to the principles of ethics and morality. But till today, people have not internalized them and made them a part of their character and conduct. As someone has so aptly said, if you want to know how people should live, read the scripture. If you want to know how they actually live, read the newspaper. The approach of religious preachers is to tempt people with the reward of heaven in the hereafter if they follow the moral principles and frighten them with punishment in the hell if they don't. With increasing education, the effectiveness of this approach is diminishing. An educated thinking mind wants to know the relevance of moral principles in this world. With this in mind, the book makes the point that to influence people's thinking in today's world of reason and science, it should be emphasized that apart from hereafter, ethics and morality are important for better life for everyone in this world. We need to explain to the people that something is bad not because it is forbidden, but it is forbidden because it is bad. For example, drinking and gambling are bad not because they are forbidden, but they are forbidden because they are bad. Prohibited or not, they would still be bad and harmful. The rational basis of principles and values should be explained. People should be convinced, not frightened and tempted. It should be convincingly explained that what is good for the hereafter is also good for this world, and what is good for this world is good for the hereafter. In a deeper sense, there is no conflict between the two. The path to both is the same. To conclude, without transition to modernity, Muslims cannot attain the strength to defend their legitimate rights. As the Greek historian Thucydides famously said in the context of Peloponnesian Wars, the strong will do what they will, and the weak suffer what they must. Power equation is everything. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Ishrat Bhai. Wonderful presentation, very inspiring. And now I invite Talmid Saab again for a very brief concluding remarks, and then we go for question answer. Talmid Saab.
Thank you, sir, for your very lucid presentation. You have given in very simple language the essence of the faith. The division of the faith into the Quran Sharif message into devotional and behavioral is very clear. And this is part of a long tradition. Numerous scholars from time to time have asserted this divide and suggested that, look, matters relating to faith, matters relating to belief in God and engagement with God are immutable. But all the other aspects which are given in the Quran Sharif, which are basically assertions of principles, can in detail and application be modified over the centuries, and indeed have been modified over the centuries, not as much as they could have been. There are certain points to be made. The great shock to Islam and Muslims emerged when this robust encounter with the Western armed forces and then subsequently with Western culture. There was a sense of defeat in the late 18th, early 19th century. And it was accepted that this is a total defeat. It is a defeat not just of one battle or one war. It is a civilizational setback for the Muslim communities, not just in West Asia, but also in South Asia and beyond in Africa and elsewhere. There was a very substantial and robust response. It is not as if the minds of Muslims had shut down. And the names of some of the people that you mentioned, sir, Jamaluddin Afghani, Muhammad Abdu, Rashid Rada, and several others who together constituted the Nahda, the Renaissance that they talked about. They explored every issue that had agitated Muslims, and their entire effort was to somehow modernize the community. Looking back as historians, we find that this effort failed and the Nahda collapsed. This is because the one crucial mistake that these commentators made was that they believed that the West is their ally in progress, in change. This was the crucial error. No Western power has actually ever supported positive change in the dominated realm. They want they want the communities to remain obscurantist. They encourage the rise of certain leaders who will support them. Divide and rule has been a very old gambit. And I've argued in the book West Asia at War in the first chapter that this crucial error actually ensured the failure of Nahda. It has been a catastrophe for the community. If Nahda became Nakba, it is because of this failure. The West is not our ally. Therefore, if change has to occur, it has to occur on the basis of our own effort. But all of this cracks against the rock of politics. If there have been numerous reform movements, but there has never been encouragement to reform, genuine, deep, widespread, substantial reform in any Muslim community by the leadership. Leaders are threatened by change because any change that is finally implemented, it requires popular participation in governance, regardless of the details and whatever the form of that. Popular participation. This is anathema to the ruling communities all across the Islamic realm. In fact, when you look back, you see that whenever there have been assertions of shaping a state order on the basis of Islam, quote unquote, they have enforced some of the worst aspects of the faith. If you remember a certain leader in our neighboring countries who became a military dictator, and he, in order to gain support as an Islamic, as the guardian of Islam, he enforced hudud punishments, as if that was the core essence of Islam. Recall another major country in West Asia, which shaped its core conduct and it's on the basis of Islam, a reformed brand that was unique to that area. But what was overwhelmingly seen were not elements of faith, not even a discussion of faith. It was all about hudud punishments. Intrusive, cruel, very harsh, and a threat. And my own assessment then was very clear. No authoritarian ruler believes in Islam, believes in the message of Islam. He uses hudud punishments as a source of coercion. This is the basis on which he ensures the continuum of his rule and possibly of his dynasty. And this has been a pattern. What can we do? This is something. Now, any study of Islam, and many times when there is a crisis, say 9/11, I heard Crown Prince Abdullah bin Abdul Aziz say, peace, tolerance is the core of the message of Islam, and publicly castigated the ulama for not giving this message to the people, separating the ruler from the ulama as if the ulama was an independent entity. And we were bewildered. I said, what are you doing? This was your policy, and it has now given this horrific response to you, which threatens you. Any scholar will tell you, and Ambassador Aziz has brought this out very robustly, the core messages of Islam are justice, adl, and public welfare, maslaha. There are scholars who have examined the work of qazis in the Ottoman realm. Very rarely have they found judges quoting from Sharia, saying, oh, the Sharia says this, Sharia says that. Most of the judges used to say, on the basis of maslaha, I give this. Public good was the influence upon the judge, public welfare, not the written word of the Sharia. So we have a long history of that as well. The problem then is, so we have two issues that we need to investigate further. Number one, the propensity of rulers to use the faith to strengthen authoritarian rule, consistently discourage any attempt at reform. Constitutional writers, as recently as the late 20th century, all across the Arab world, the whole movement is referred to as constitutional movement because they called for a constitution based on Islam, but also married these principles to the principles of parliamentary democracy. And they called, on the basis of Islam, called for a constitution, human rights, elections, political parties, and open discussion. Wherever they were rulers, they said they should become constitutional monarchs. Not a single instance has this approach been implemented. So the first problem that you have is with the rulers, with the political order. The second one is equally distressing and difficult. In the West, when we look at the West, and particularly the modernity that is associated with the West over the last 3 centuries, it has been embedded on the basis of a shift away from faith, implying that faith and modernity don't actually go together. And here is a model. In the case of Europe, particularly Western Europe, a bastion of modernity, bastion of progress and success, the churches are empty. You have, therefore, people have become irreligious, and they are espouse secular norms. In the case of the United States, the picture is more confusing because the country is so deeply polarized. A large country, very deeply polarized, with a very diverse community. It is a country that upholds faith as its core, as a source of identity. In God we trust, all the banknotes, everything, and constant reference to matters of faith from their political leaders. But if you look at the country as a whole, the most progressive elements within that country are overwhelmingly non-religious. So the question that Ambassador Aziz may like to discuss with us is how to navigate the principles that he has put before us through the resistance, in face of the resistance of political authority, which is overwhelmingly coercive and overwhelmingly intolerant, and uses hudud punishments to strike fear in the hearts of the people. And the second, the model of modernity that we have, primarily from the West, is a model that shows a very serious shift away from matters of faith, where there is a kind of contradiction projected by them between matters of faith and matters of progress. So these are the 2 points that I thought I would mention for Ambassador Aziz. The core message that he gave, it was something personally fascinating for me, that the essence of Islam is in the 99 names of God. It is there everywhere. Most of us are named after those messages, after those qualities, but we just don't even think about them. And I'm glad that Ambassador Saab has mentioned this, that right, and we don't even have to be a learned person, the names of Allah himself, which are there very often in mosque. The mosque in Abu Dhabi has them put down very, very prominently in the main hall. And it reminds you that this is what Allah is trying to convey to you. And this is the message that he has, and these are the qualities that he has enhanced and that he has emphasized as crucial in understanding him and engaging with him. So the message is right there in front of our eyes. So
Thank
I thank you,
Really,
sir, for your lucid remarks, and I would send the platform back to our host, who will now manage the discussion and the Q&A. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And before we go to question and answer session, coming Saturday, we have a very prominent speaker on the other front, which is called the right to question in India. Aruna Rai doesn't need any introduction. She is one of the most prominent Indian political and social activists at this moment, one of the most, I said, asserting the right to question in challenging times, local and global, coming Saturday. And she will be joined by 2 other activists on the same they are associated with the same foundation. So over to Dr. Rafat Hussain for moderating question and answer session.
Thank you, Dr. Aziz. The session, question and answer session is open now. And thank you to Ambassador Ishrat Aziz Saab and Ambassador Kadmi Saab for the introduction as well as the concluding remark. So as expected, there are a lot of questions and comments and raised hands. So let's go from, so there are two options of asking the questions. One is you raise your digital hand or you put your comment and question in the chat box. So there are several, so let's begin from the chat box. There are several comments and questions from Ali Wasiuzama, but I will only take a few, maybe two only. So the first one is the comment. The best approach would be to accept that Islamic teachings are inconsistent with modern times because Islam is 1400 years old when human values and society had a different perspective. Now Muslims should adapt to the modern environment if they want to survive in this world. But Muslims are not taught to live in this world. They are always preparing for the imaginary world. So so the question is amputation of hands as a punishment, stoning to death for adultery, halala, apostasy, punished by death, consistent with modernity? So I request all the people who are asking questions, please be very brief and expect the same from speakers. Please go ahead.
Yes. Hello.
Ji, we hear you, Aziz bhai.
The question as to conflict between modernity and Islam, as I say again and again, if you look at the message of Quran, there is no conflict between modernity and its message. But if you go by theology which has been developed, for example, stoning to death, there is no stoning to death in Quran. So theology that has been developed which focuses too much on, let us leave the devotional religion because it is there and it is very simple. So there is no, it doesn't come in in conflict with modernity, because if you want to pray 5 times, good. If you don't want to pray, that's all right. But when it comes to behavioral religion, you must follow the norms or the requirements of the existing time. So that is why I have made this distinction. But let me come to the main point. The main point is that it depends on whether Islam conflicts with modernity. Depends on your definition of Islam. If you think the sine qua non of Islam is cutting of hands and lashing of people for drinking and so on, then yes, of course it comes in conflict, because it comes in conflicts with basic human rights, which are there in Quran, if you read Quran carefully. So the conflict is not there if you read Quran in a holistic way. As I keep saying, how many times has cutting of hands been mentioned? Once. But how many times has justice been mentioned? How many times compassion has been mentioned? Forgiveness has been mentioned? Many, many times. So I think we have to define Islam correctly, and we have to revise a lot of our theology. So I am pro-religion, but I am against theology in some respects, because theology deals too much with small trivial matters and not with the basic issues of good governance and prosperity of the people, their welfare. And if you focus on the welfare, etc., then you should have no problem.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ishrat sir. The next is from Muqtadar Khan. Dr. Muqtadar Khan, please.
Assalamu alaikum to all of you.
Salam
I want to congratulate Ishrat Saab on a very important book. And I wanted to draw your attention to a hadith in which the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that indeed the best among you are those who learn about the Quran and teach it. So I think it was addressed about,
Yes.
and that's where I stop with niceties. I have a fundamental objection to your book. I've not read the book, so please forgive me if you have covered this in your book. It appears that you have taken modernity for granted. Even though your book is titled Quran and Modernity, there is no systematic discussion of what is modernity. Let me submit to you that what is happening in Gaza is not because of Islam or Muslims. This is modernity. What you're seeing happen, liberal democracies committing genocide and producing discourses to justify genocide. If you listen to Americans today, they have invented a new principle called justifiable genocide. And this is modernity. And you want to tell me that the Quran is compatible with this? Modernity includes colonialism. Modernity includes imperialism. Modernity includes all kinds of things like World War I to World War II to use of nuclear weapons. I don't think that the Quran is compatible with these atrocities. The Holocaust is a consequence of modernity. And I don't think the Quran is compatible with modernity. I get your point that Muslim thinking has become stale. There's no doubt about it, that Muslims stopped thinking a long time ago, and they are suffering from an inferiority complex by Western power. Some people react to Western power, some people react to Western prosperity and culture, and they feel that Islam is the reason why they have, Turkey is a very good example of how they blamed Islam for backwardness.
Muqtadar Saab, please ask.
But I submit to you that there is more to the Quran than just dealing with modernity. And I hope that in your book, you have not excluded the spiritual side of Islam. But I do agree to you that certain ways in which Islam is being interpreted today acts like a lock on Muslim brains. I discovered that Muslim brains are in their shoes. And when they go to the mosque, they leave the brains outside. And then they do the shura inside without their brains because they come up with thoughtless positions. That is true. But I do also want to tell you that
the Muqtadar Saab, we have
modernity. We are living on the cusp of modern and postmodern era.
Dr. Muqtadar,
what is happening in the West today is a reaction to some postmodern tendencies. So even the West has rejected modernity very aggressively, whether it is Habermas or whether it is Foucault or whether it is the women's movement. All of these movements have come out, even the LGBTQ movement. These are all critiques of modernity. So I think
Saab, do you hear me?
Is stop comparing themselves to the West.
Ask your question, please.
Yeah,
West has done some really horrible things. The West has done some wonderful things. I have walked around in Cairo.
Hello, Muqtadar Saab.
2 a.m. to 4 a.m.
Hello, Muqtadar Saab. Can you hear me?
I think
I don't think he's hearing, so I've
messaged him. So I think what Muslims need to do is to focus a little bit more on the Quran as a principle. There is one verse in the Quran, and I will stop at that. It is the 18th verse of 39th chapters. It says, "Allazina yastami'una al-qawl wa yattabi'una ahsana."
Can you please?
Those who listen to the Quran,
he will not be checking.
Follow the best.
You have to put him on mute.
Okay.
Are the ones who have been guided by Allah. So it is even the Quran acknowledges that you can come up with less than best interpretations of the text.
The
Quran acknowledges that you can come up with better interpretations.
Long question with a very brief.
It's not a question, it's a taqreer.
I will make just one comment. In fact, in my book, in the introductory chapter, I have tried to define what I understand by modernity. And the basic definition of modernity, to my mind, is application of mind to everything, use of reason, freedom, and individual rights. That is modernity. I do not think that what is happening in Gaza is because of modernity. In fact, it is a result of some very old tribal instincts. So people should read the book, and I have defined what is modernity, and they will find that what my definition of modernity is compatible with Quran and Sunnah. Yes.
Ishrat,
Thank you.
And all the audience, please listen carefully to what the moderator is saying. We are not going to have more speeches here.
Yeah, Razibhai, I think he was not able to hear us somehow, whatever. So,
There are so many people who...
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Ishrat Saab. And the next is Zainul Abdin Saab raised your hand. He raised his hand. Please go ahead.
Assalamualaikum. Thank you for the talk. That was very compelling and very convincing, somewhat provocative in the matter of interest, but that's one of the topics we can discuss later. But looking at the wisdom of you and experience over the years in the Middle East, what are the steps each one of us can do? Let's look for some positivity there or some constructive methods. I mean, how do we start the dialogue? How do we spread it across? The first step, some member said it would be nice if you can share your speech. It was a really good synthesis of your book. So I'll appreciate if you can share, and Jazakallah for all the wonderful talk.
I think you must remember something about leaders. They never innovate. They don't want to say anything new. But if there is a public opinion that has been built in favor of something, they, what I say, ride the wave. So what has to be done, intellectuals, academics, they must honestly and very courageously speak out the truth. And I think we have to make one thing clear. For example, amongst many things, that democracy, for example, is perfectly Islamic. And democracy today is what caliphate was 1400 years ago. Caliphate was consultative governance. You know that Quran says consultative governance. So what we have to do is to create a public opinion in favor of freedom of thought, most of all freedom of thought and democracy and other things. Otherwise, things will not change. And in this problem is neither the rulers nor the religious establishment want to take any risk. They just keep repeating what has been said all these years because they are establishments, and establishments' first interest is the protection of the establishment, not change. I hope I have answered your question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question from the chat box is from Dr. Iram Gul. Why do Muslims feel this topic, Quran and modernity, to be addressed when the Muslims were a rising power politically and intellectually during early periods? They were modern, or whatever what modernity really is. So
I have said in the
yes.
I have said in the book, modernity is freedom of thought and application of mind to every issue. So when you do not go and quote authority, you do not say so and so said it in the past. Okay, say what he said in the past, but test it on the basis of the prevailing circumstances and the validity of what is to be done. It must be judged on the basis of results. So that is what modernity is. That is what we need. In the beginning, Muslims did very well because there was a new Islamic rule in its time. Islamic thought in its time was very liberal. But then at one point of time, when the Islamic power started, political power started to decline, The Muslim thinker said, let us remain united and not have discussion, because discussion leads to disputes and conflict. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hassan Saab, please.
Ishrat Bhai, your excellent presentation, two questions arise in my mind listening to you. The first is Ijtihad, a very important concept, well accepted as a concept, but what is missing is the process. Unless a process is put in place for Ijtihad to happen, it will never happen. And the reason Ijtihad doesn't happen is because there is no agreed process by which the community or the leaders, thought leaders of the community can come together to actually engage in Ijtihad and come to some conclusions. The other thought is regarding faith and modernity. Of course, I don't at all agree with what Mukhtar Saab said about his very dark interpretation. But taking from what you have said in your book yourself, unless faith and modernity, the pace, the dynamics of faith and modernity are aligned, misalignment will take place. And so faith must keep pace with modernity, which is basically change. And therefore, there have to be some mechanisms. There have to be some mechanisms in place that allow faith and modernity to move in an aligned fashion. Otherwise, we'll have misalignment, as we are seeing around us today. Those are the two questions that I have, and I would be happy to hear from you and to hear from Mr. Talmiz Ahmad on that.
As to your question, that we should create some kind of a forum or institution for Ijtihad, I am afraid there will not be just one forum or institution. Different institutions must come up with their ideas. The main thing why Ijtihad sometimes gets it leads to problems is our tendency, our proclivity for discussions to become disputes and then conflicts. I think the most important, any discussion of any subject, whether it is religious or any, we must trust the bona fides of the other side. And we must examine all issues objectively. There should be objective criteria to decide what is right and what is wrong, not just quoting authorities. So I think that's one problem about Ijtihad. The second is that this whole thing about conflict between modernity and Islam or the scripture arises from our lack of clarity about what is modernity. Modernity, simply, as I have said in my book, is it modernity to have the freedom to have nightclubs? Is it modernity to have nightclubs? I said, no. That is not a sign of modernity. Modernity consists of society allowing drinking or, for example, for that matter, going to nightclubs. But real modernity on the part of individual is to apply his mind and decide whether it is good or bad for him. So that, I think, is the real essence of modernity. It is modernity on the part of society to give freedom to the individual. But if the individual misuses that freedom, that is his mistake. But we cannot deny freedom to people just because some people misuse freedom. Because in the end, freedom brings better results than denial of freedom. If you deny freedom, there will be greater losses for the society than if you allowed freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishrat Bhai. The next one is from Imtiaz Saab.
Assalamu alaikum all. Thank you, Ambassador Ishrat Aziz, for your excellent presentation, and also Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad for very insightful and very knowledgeable comments. I have two questions. If both are allowed, I will ask them. One is on knowledge, the other is on jihad. So if Faisal will say that I can ask both, I will ask both. What is the answer?
Ask both, but ask briefly.
Good. Is knowledge always useful, helpful, and comforting? Or at the highest level, it is confusing? And the context of my question is, nobody knows what is time, matter, energy, wave, particle, quantum mechanics. Still, they all work. Everything works, but nobody knows what they are. So that's number one question. And at the highest level, it is uncomforting. You do not know. The second question is jihad. On jihad, if I understood you correctly, I think you are almost ruling out the armed struggle. I agree with you. Peaceful struggle is preferred, especially against oneself or in whatever circumstances. But armed struggle is definitely needed for self-defense and for establishing justice. So please do not underrate the importance of armed struggle. Second question.
Thank you. To answer your second question first, yes, armed struggle is perfectly legitimate in self-defense. In fact, if you read Quran and Sunnah very carefully, self-defense, jihad in self-defense has been emphasized, not in an offensive kind of war, let's say. So there is no difference between you and I think the correct interpretation of jihad. I have gone into great detail to tell what is peaceful jihad. And one of the things I've said, even to bring up your family well and bring up children who are well educated, is jihad. So if you pursue jihad, some people have said that jihad is the sixth pillar. I say yes, but depends on your definition of jihad. If jihad is peaceful struggle to make the society better and stronger in every way, that is the sixth, you could say, pillar. Now, your first question, I must say, it's something that I'm glad you are interested in such philosophical things, because I read a lot about quantum theory and Einsteinian theory and the whole history of scientific thought and all that. And I'm still not very sure of what is the truth about all these matters. When you get down to the Max Planck level, you find there are so many uncertainties. In fact, there is a whole uncertainty principle enunciated by a man called Heisenberg based on quantum theory. Now, the thing is, the good thing about science is science does not say that we know the truth. Science only says the truth is what can be established by demonstration. And if a demonstration disproves an earlier theory, then that earlier theory has to be rejected. So I think the scientific approach is very valid. That whether quantum theory is right, some people challenge quantum theory, some people challenge Einstein's. Some of Einstein's ideas, I have my own ideas about time, distance, velocity, and their correlation, but that's not something I will discuss here. But yes, I think the scientific approach, by the way, Quran emphasizes scientific approach. It is not a textbook of science, but it emphasizes the methodology of science. And if you read a book by Sir Francis Bacon called Novum Organum, that deals exactly with scientific approach. He was a man who defined what is science, not that he was a scientist in terms of specific discoveries, but he did explain very well what is scientific approach to establishment of truth. Thank you.
Thank you. So another from chat box, Tariq Azam, and that is, in spite of the very pessimistic picture painted, especially in the backwardness in the development in political and technological field, there seems to be a great interest in Islam in the West, such that it is the fastest growing religion. Can the author explain this apparent anomaly?
Well, I think, first of all, we should not go by what the praise that West gives us. So I would not put my faith in that. Second thing is the question about the fastest growing religion. Well, I keep hearing this. I read about it. I have even seen facts and figures. But unless more details are given, I cannot decide. I mean, fastest growing, is it because of birth rate? Or is it because of people who are getting converted? And what are the kind of people who are getting converted? Are these intelligent thinking people or just very ordinary people? I mean, I have quoted in my own book some of the praise given to Prophet Muhammad by some of the top thinkers of the West. But that is different to saying that Quran, I mean, that Islam is spreading, and that's something very, very important. Unless we go deeper into the issue. I mean, I like to establish truth on the basis of investigation and asking questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The Nilofer, please.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Nilofer Hamid Pasha, and
welcome.
Thank you. And I don't know, you might have known my dad and my dada, both Ambassador Ishrat Ahmed Sahab, Dr. Sami Hamid, who was the principal and dean of JNMC at Aligarh Muslim University, and Dr. Abdul Hamid in Lucknow. So
I know them. I know them.
Yeah. You probably know them. So I have been here in the United States for the past several years, and now we live in Maryland, United States, with my husband, Dr. Professor Sayed Pasha. So your talk was very, very interesting to me. And as my dad's daughter, you probably might know, I mean, I think I go with reasoning. So what I would like to, I have comments and maybe one small question to at the end, that Muslims 1400 plus years ago, they invented modernity and secularism and justice. Because before that, Europe and the rest of the world was in dark ages.
Yes.
And we brought that. And if those principles were applied today of modernity, justice, and secularism, we wouldn't have Gaza on our hands, or Myanmar, or the other place, the Uyghur Muslim issue. Because if those people were treated like equals and justice was provided to them, they wouldn't be treated like as if they are ants or flies to kill at will. That would not have happened. And if the Muslim people, the Muslim Ummah that we have, had realized that, I mean, of course, you said everything, that there are governments that are extremely powerful and they are supposedly...
Miss Nilofer,
I understand you're saying.
My sincere apology to interrupt you. Please come to the question.
Come to the...
Now, all right. Exactly. Yeah, go ahead, Ambassador.
You can get my contacts and we can be in touch. Yes.
Okay. So my question is why haven't you taken your book to the wider American audience? Because it's worth exploring that and bringing that to the American people who are still very open-minded, but they just don't have substantive discussion about Islam other than Islamophobia and kill all the Muslims. That's my question. Thank you.
Yes, I have tried to take it to very different people. I've taken it to lots of non-Muslims also, and they have appreciated it. I will try to promote this book further. And this book is written not for just Muslims, it is written for non-Muslims as well. And
Exactly.
Many of the non-Muslims who read the book, and they are very prominent figures in India, they said, this is the book we need. And this is the book that you should try to, because it removes lots of misunderstandings about Islam amongst non-Muslims, apart from the fact that it reminds Muslims of what the essence of Islam is, the essence of Quran's messages. Thank you, and you can remain in touch with me. I really like to exchange thoughts with a wide variety of people, including those who may differ with me and differ strongly.
I'll definitely do that. If your email address is shared here, we would definitely be in touch. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. You can contact the organizer and he can share the email address with the permission of Dr. Ishrat Aziz.
My permission is there.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Nazir Ahmad, please.
Gee, insightful, thought-provoking, amazing, both of our distinguished ambassadors. The clarity with which they have projected their vast experience onto the canvas of history with all of its myriad issues, politics, culture, banking, etc. For my question, I will flip the discussion on its head and ask if the thrust of the Quran is not the individual, the transformation of the individual, rather than the imposition of specific structures, etc., etc. And is not the crisis of modern civilization a crisis of individual ethos, individual spirituality? And is it not correct to say that the Quran, and indeed all religion, are focused on a transformation of the individual? This is for both of our distinguished ambassadors. Please.
Yes, it's a very important question, very also difficult question to answer in a very short time. I have always wondered, if you look at many people, experts in theology, they seem to focus on individual salvation. They do not think of the society and its welfare. As I have said in my book, the Quran very clearly says that this book has been sent as a blessing to mankind. Now, what can blessing to mankind mean? To my mind, good of the people. So there is that aspect, that you should think of the society, and also what you call what I call devotional religion of 5 pillars of Islam. That is for individual salvation. But behavioral religion is about the salvation of the people as a whole. And I think we have to keep this distinction in mind and try to show that actually Quran and Islam, correctly understood, they respect individual rights as well as the you could say the rights of the society. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Aisha, please.
My question is, Assalamu alaikum everyone. My question is, what would you do, or what you may have done in case some people from within the fold of Islam raised objection to your definition of modernity and it's being compatible with Islamic spirit? And how do you defend ijtihad, because there's no unanimity on the definition of ijtihad, how it should be done and how should we go about it? So if suppose you have a person who says that Islam doesn't not in the way that has been discussed already, like modernity in terms of colonial modernity or modernity that comes only from the Western civilization, Eurocentric kind of modernity, not that modernity in its spirit, the way you have defined it. If people say it's not true and Islam is something frozen in time, and you have to follow Islamic principles in the rules that have been stated, that have been laid down in the Quran.
Thank you.
How would you defend your thesis?
Yes. First of all, I would be ready to discuss and talk to anybody who differs with me, so long as he listens to me carefully, and I listen to him with equal care. Yeah. Also, I would like him to, whatever he says, I would like him to produce evidence for that, to produce facts. If he says this is what Quran says, I say, well, quote the line. If this is what Hadith says, then I'll say, well, quote to me the Hadith. And I have done it in my book. My book is really lots of quotes from Quran and lots of quotes from Ahadith, lots of them. So to me, any discussion will become endless if we just keep saying, I believe this, and the other person says, but I believe that. To me, what is the basis of your belief? What is the evidence you have for your belief? What is the logic you have for your belief? And can your belief, except for belief in God and heaven and hell and all that, how can you say that this belief is right? For example, I'll give you, let's say, the punishment about cutting off hand. Of course, it is there, and it is mentioned just once. And I have gone into great detail in the book why I say that it is not the essential message of Quran. Now, the point is that no discussion can go. A discussion cannot come to any conclusion unless it is judged on the basis of objective criteria. For example, if a person says Muslims are the best people in the world, then I will say, well, do they have less crime? Do they have less violence? Do they have more? Are they intellectually more productive? So I think there has to be a criterion for deciding these things. And as I said, I would be very willing to discuss anything with anybody who is willing to do it on agreed principles, which is show me the proof, show me the reason, show me the result. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishrat bhai. So the next is Abdul Jabbar Saab. That would be the last question unless I had missed anyone. So please, this is the last chance to raise your hand. And unless I miss someone, don't raise a new hand. And remind me in chat box. So Abdul Jabbar Saab, please. And I see Nawab Bhai wants to ask a question. Okay. So probably that would be the last one.
Yeah. So
Jabbar Saab.
Yes, thank you. It's a wonderful discussion. Enjoyed it. Also, for the first time, I listened to a mentor-mentee combination. Remarkable. So I think that's my question. I think people have asked in different forms. So you are an intellectual power. You just put your power into writing something very important for the community. So what is that? Do you see any kind of, you see a younger generation of people prescribing to this kind of intellectual exercise? That's very important. How do you build that bottom-up kind of approach? So do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I thought a lot about what is the purpose of my writing, or will it have any result or not? And let me say, I don't think of it as more than a drop, maybe in the ocean, not the bucket. I have said certain things, and if it reaches even a small group of people, I hope it will multiply, because the ideas that I have put there in my book they have a life and vitality of their own. Those who read it will find it, if they read it carefully. I am reminded of a book by a man called Naipaul. It was called India, a Land of Million Mutinies. Now, what did he mean? He said small things are happening in India which will all combine together to create a strong, let us say, wave or a current. So I think societies don't change because one person has written one thing. I must say that I could have said, well, there should be ijtihad without doing the ijtihad myself. I have gone out on the out in how should I say? I put my neck on the block by saying not only that do ijtihad and then sit back on jihad, on interest, on democracy. I have said specific things, and I have said why they are compatible. Intellectual freedom, why, for example, apostasy and heresy and all this, which we keep endlessly discussing without discussing what is good governance and how to achieve it. What is prosperity for the nation, economic strength for the nation, and how to achieve it. Nobody discusses it because those are very difficult questions. So I have just, let us say, made a small effort. It's just like a drop in the ocean, as I'm saying, not even in the bucket. But that was what I felt about myself, that I have gained some experience, and there is a certain thinking process which is important. And let me share it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishrat Saab. So let's move on. I have only a couple of more minutes, and there are two questions, two hands raised. Nawab Saab, please.
Thank you for writing this beautiful book. I have been living in the United States for more than 50 years, and I have made many decisions on Islam on my own. And one of them was the mortgage. And you pointed out that 5% mortgage is quite Islamic. However, you ask any Maulvi in the United States who are living in the United States will say this is not true. It is haram. So here is my point, that we do have to modernize ourselves. And we do have to change, but this change has to go through several people who are heading Islam. Not ordinary people are not heading Islam. So that's my point. You have any comment?
Yes, thank you for your views about mortgage, and I agree with them. And I have quoted, actually, I was thinking about it again and again until I suddenly chanced upon that particular verse which I have quoted in my book, which says, do not live on usury, doubling and redoubling your wealth. Now, doubling and redoubling, can you double and redouble your wealth on 5% interest where 3.5% goes for inflation? What was condemned was, as I said, exorbitant interest rate from people who were in distress. Somebody lost a house, somebody lost his crop, and he needed money, so you squeeze him. That is wrong. Has always been wrong. That has been condemned in many societies. But 5% interest rate for business investment is perfectly legitimate, apart from the fact that there is no other way. If you don't have banking and finance, you will forever remain economically poor and weak. And weakness is a sin.
Yeah. Time permitting, I may have some question on that one, but I refrain. Next one is from quick. Parvez Saab, just one quick question, and that would be the last.
Assalamu alaikum. Very intellectually provocating discussions and a wonderful book. And I rate it as meant for the future generation. And I happen to be a new student of Quran, and we are diving deep into it. And we find that the Quran is written on a classical Arabic. And to understand the classical Arabic, we should encourage our new generation to study the classical Arabic grammar, and so that the correct interpretation is come out with each ayah. I happen to attend one course regarding.
Parvez Saab, please.
So my only submission is that this book is meant for the future generation. Let us
Thank you.
encourage to study all future students to study the classical Arabic grammar, so that understanding is more deep and correct. There is a lot of gap if we don't understand the classical grammar. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Before I hand over to Razi Bhai, so thank you again to both speakers. One quick question somebody asked is jihad allowed to establish the justice? Because you said it is allowed in self-defense, but there is a question that how about to establish the justice in the society?
Justice and to help persecuted, like in Gaza, if there is a
Yeah, that's okay. We are not talking about Gaza. We are talking about.
I'm saying if there is a power strong enough to intervene, I think that would be justified.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. And you must first become strong. You know, I quoted to you the line of Thucydides, which says that the strong will do what they will, and the weak must suffer what they have to. The problem is, to become strong, you require long-term effort. You cannot just take the weapon in your hand and start a jihad. You know that Turkey declared jihad but got nowhere in the First World War. No, you need strength. Building strength, it does not require just weapons. It requires economic foundations, which requires freedom of thought, good governance, so many things.
Oh, thank you so much. Very well put. So thank you once again, both speakers, and that concludes the question and answer session. And I am now giving back to Dr. Raziuddin for final remark.
Thank you, Rafat. Thank you so much. No remarks from my side, probably because enough we have learned enough. Enough was asked, and it was a very comprehensive, very wonderfully engaging session. That we saw, sorry, not much came, not much time was given to you, but it was all the nature of the discussion. People will start asking. So thank you all very much. And we have to now end this session and hope to re-engage with you again soon or whenever possible. And I'm sure everybody has learned a lot, benefited a lot. YouTube will be available in a week time. And so thank you.
Ishrat Bhai, I was checking it, that it's not on the Amazon yet, your book.
It is available on Amazon. Yes. You just type out my name.
Okay, thank you. I will check again. Thank you.
Okay. Just type out my name and on Google, and you will find my.
Yeah, I did the Quran and Modernity, and lot of Islam and Modernity books came up. But I will check again. That's not a question.
Yes, please do.
Okay, I will check by your name. Thank you so much. Thank you once again, and my sincere apology if I missed anyone in the question and answer session, or it looks like I interrupted Muqtadar Khan Saab. Of course, I didn't want to, because he keeps talking, and because of the limited time, we have to be a little bit careful, because he was not somehow he was not able to listen to us. But anyway, thank you so much.
He turned off his system.
Yeah, it is some technical issue.
Yeah.
Thank you.